I'm in Hanson. I live in Wisconsin, and I've been a member of the EAPG for about 10 years. Well, no, only about 5 years, but I've been collecting glass for about 10 years. And I am currently the president, or not the president, thank goodness, secretary of the EAPGS Society. And this summer, I got the idea to maybe write an article about one of my favorite patterns. I talked to Carl, and he was very kind, patient, and willing to help me figure out how to get this done. And so the pattern that we're talking about today was featured in the fall 2021 News Journal. And he ended up making it the cover article. So we got the cover photo that my husband took, the photo of a spooner with strawberries on it. And the name of this pattern is, it was made by the Dalzell brothers and Gilmore Glass Company, and they named it number 9D. And they were in Wellsburg, West Virginia. They operated from 1883 to 1888. And this pattern was introduced right in the middle, 1885. And this was from the American Pottery and Glassware Reporter, and on January 22nd, 1885, had this to say about this pattern and others, quote, "Among the lines they will produce are exceedingly elegant shapes," unquote. And then more specifically about this pattern, they're numbered D9, and they typed that wrong. Should have been 9D. Pattern, ornamental with representations of fruits of various kinds, is rich and tasteful. And just showing you an example of the exceedingly elegant shapes of the high standard compote and the low standard. The big thing in that, there's lots of fruit patterns out there. The key to identifying this one, there's several. We'll start with the scallops. Ruth Webb Lee in 1931 book and Minnie Watson Comm in 1939 book did recognize the key to putting the correct fruit pieces together was the border. And Comm in her 5th book in 1952 wrote, quote, "Around the base of the bowl there is a scallop cup into which the bowl rests," unquote. And there were also scallops on other pieces. This is on the cake stand. Jim Veach on patternglass.com said, quote, "Or in the case of the cake stands in the center of the plate around the stem," which you can see in the picture. On the cake stand, the scallop cup is below the cup, which again, you can see on this picture. The scallops on the compotes or bowls, they continue under the bowl into concave flares, flutes that form a circle around the standard, as you can see. Another one of the characteristics is the handle. Comm in book 2 in 1950 describes the handle on the cornucopia picture as, quote, "The handles are especially attractive and distinctive, bent sharply up at the top, ring both top and bottom near the body, with a spread of stipple foliage between the rings and the body," which is a pretty good description of what we're seeing. And this is a picture of the stipple foliage that's below where the handle attaches. And you can see on the much smaller creamer, it's very same handle. And then the stem and standards are identifying characteristics too. Common Book 5, 1952 describes the stem on the creamers as, quote, "A beautiful one on a high standard, on a high stand, the stem terate with 2 bulges above and below the middle," which you can see here and here. And further identifying for other pieces, on the low standard, the bulge is before the stem meets the base, and that base is plain with a shelf. And then on the cake standards and the high compote standards, there's 1 bulge in the middle, and then there are uneven rays on the base. And on the pitchers, the stem on the pitchers is short and plain with a plain base with a shelf, kind of like that one's compote. And this is the medium milk pitcher that is 8.5 inches high and it holds 30 ounces. These are grapes on this side, and the other side has loganberries. And another thing that identifies this pattern is there are plants on the seam lines, and they are not the same on each one, not even each piece is the same. There are 2 seams on each of the pieces. And one seam, this is one seam line on the 8 1/4 inch diameter high standard compote. And I actually have 2 of these, and the other one doesn't have anything on the seam lines. And this is a seam line on the sugar base, and the other side is different. And this is a seam line on the 6 1/4 inch compotes. You can see they're all quite different from each other. Now, our main topic will be talking about the different kinds of fruits that are on these pieces. There were 14 fruits were used on the 35 known forms, and it has many AKAs. There, or AK also known as. There were 7 listed. There are 7 listed in the EAPGS database. They are blackberry and grape, loganberry and grape, strawberry and currant, cherry and fig, cornucopia. Multiple fruits or many fruits is also listed somewhere else, and 3 fruits. And there is a chart in that news journal article that details what pieces each fruit is present on. And if you'd like a copy, you can email Carl. This is just a picture of it. And we're going to start with grapes. I'm going to do them in order of the most numerous. So grapes starts the list, and they were used 16 different pieces, and most of them are pretty realistic grapes. This is on the 9 1/4 inch cake stand, and we have already seen grapes on that one milk pitcher. And there were also grapes on the 10 1/2 inch cake stand, which was just a little bit bigger, 10 1/4, excuse me. And then they were on the 8 1/4 diameter high standard compote. There were 3 sizes of compotes, and they came in both low standard and high standards. So there are 6 compotes altogether. For strawberry, there were 14 pieces that have strawberries, and they are all pretty realistic. This is on a bigger cake stand, 11 1/4 inch, and then it's on a 7 1/4 inch high standard compote. And this one, it seemed like there were more leaves than strawberries, so each of them were a little different. And the strawberries were also on a lid, the 8 1/4 inch compote lid, and they were on the goblet. The next one is cherries, and there were 8 pieces that had cherries. There's 3 different sizes of the pitchers, and the small one and the large one have the cherries on the side, and the one in the middle is actually grapes. That's a picture we saw before, and that one's called loganberry and grape. And their cherries were also on the lid, so you can see that one pretty good. And then on the cornucopia pitcher, it had the cherries and cherry blossoms. Gooseberry was next with 8 pieces that had gooseberries. These are probably some of my favorite. I like these. This is on the smallest cake stand, the 9 1/4 inch one. And they were on 2 sizes of the compotes, the 8 1/4 inch low standard and the 7 1/4 high standard. And you can see they're not really, the fruits look pretty much the same, but the leaves are a little bit different. They added more stippling on the compote, the higher one. Next is the pear. There were 6 pieces with pears on them. This is from one of the compotes, 8 1/4 inch one. And there was a pear on the sugar base. And then there were pears on a creamer and the goblet. They aren't quite the typical pear shape, but there were on this one. There's pear leaves here, and they don't really know what else they'd be, so they look like pears, I guess. Then we come to plums. There were 5 pieces with plums, and plums can be small, narrow, and oval shaped, so I believe these are plums. And the leaf is quite wide. And this is on the 8 1/4 inch low standard compote. And then on the 9 1/4 inch cake stand and the 8 1/4 inch high standard compote, the plums are rounder and plumper, and the leaves are very round. So now there are 5 pieces with peaches. This is a really nice compote, the 7 1/4 inch low standard. And this, the leaves are narrow, so I believe that makes this a peach. That's how I'm kind of telling them apart if you can't tell for sure. And then I believe since I worked on the article and did the chart, I've discovered that there's also a peach on the sugar bowl. That it was in the picture with the pear, but I didn't have my own sugar base. I found one after I did the article, and I realized that there was this peach on there, and because none of the pictures that I had from before were good enough to see that peach on there. And this has narrow leaves too. Then there was currants. There were 5 pieces with currants on them. This is from the goblet. This is the one again that had, you can see these pear leaves on here. And then the currant was also on the cornucopia picture. I'll show a little bit better picture of that a little later. And the currants are up here on the top by the apple. Then there's blackberry. There are 4 pieces that have blackberries. This one is on the 10 1/4 inch cake stand. They seem smaller and rounder than the loganberry. That's how we distinguish them. And then this is the loganberry. You can see they look bigger. They're usually pointing up, and this is on the smallest compote, the 6 1/4 inch high standard one. And I like the loganberries, so there's a compote that had them on. And then the milk pitcher, we saw the grapes on the other side before. And the spooner, the picture that we started with that had strawberry on the one side has loganberries. This one is a little different. They don't seem to have those little green receptacles on below the fruit. But still they're pointing up and seem to fit the loganberry. The next fruit was a fig. There were 3 pieces that had figs. This was the 11 1/4 inch cake stand. And then the figs were on the small milk pitcher that had cherries on the other side. So it's called cherry and fig. And then it was in the cornucopia pitcher, which is right here. Then we have the apple is on the sugar base, and it's also on the cornucopia pitcher right here. The rest of the fruits, there's 3 more. The rest of the fruits are only seen on a single piece. This was elderberries on the 11 1/4 inch diameter cake stand. The raspberries were on the creamer, and their mulberries are on the largest cake stand, the 12 1/4 inch diameter, but I don't have a picture of that one. Then they didn't stick just with fruits. They also put flowers on some of the pieces. This is a picture of the celery vase that has a long stem rose on one side. And then, as I mentioned before, there were cherry blossoms on that picture. So you can see the cherry and the blossom. And that the biggest cake stand, the 12 1/4 inch, has cherry blossoms on it also, that I don't have a picture of. They also branched into vegetables. There were 4 pieces that have different vegetables on them. This is the celery vase with the celery plant on it. And the eggplant has eggplant on both sides, but I don't have a picture of that one. And then there was a pickle dish that has a tomato. No, the tomato's over here, an onion and a cucumber on it. And the cornucopia pitcher has a sweet potato right in here. You may run into a different goblet that is not really part of this pattern, but it got the same name. The AKA is Loganberry and Grape. And it was made by the successor company to Dalzell Brothers, Dalzell, Gilmore, and Leighton glass number 66. And it's not known when this was made, but the company was only in business from 1888 to 1889. And this was considered low-cost packers ware. You can see this line here. It would have been a tin over the top to keep that sealed. And here's a comparison of the 2 goblets. This side has the grapes on it, and this has the currants again. And here's a picture of it in a catalog cut. So we're back to the question of, do the also known as names fit these pieces? We started with blackberry and grape, and the footed sauce dish has blackberries and grapes on it. So, and I don't have a picture of that one. The Loganberry and grape was the next one. They're on that medium milk pitcher. Strawberry and currant are on the goblet. Cherry and fig are on that small milk pitcher. And here's the cornucopia. You've seen parts of this. Here's the whole cornucopia is a basket. And this is the water pitcher that's 8.5 inches high and holds 48 ounces. And you can also understand how the name multiple or many fruits would fit this one too. So the name that would fit the most pieces is probably 3 fruits. There are 8 pieces that have 3 fruits on them. The high 8 1/4 inch high standard compote, the 7 6 1/4 inch diameter low standards, the 9 1/4 inch cake stand, the 11 1/4 inch cake stand, the goblet, the creamer, and the sugar base all have 3 fruits on them. And this just shows the cake stand. And you're maybe wondering what the other compotes had on them then. There were 3 compotes with 3 fruits on them. They're hard to photograph from the top. This pattern in general is pretty tricky to photograph because of it's pretty high relief, and the piece, you get the fruit from the other side when you're trying to photograph one side. This is 3 fruits on this 8 1/4 inch high standard. There's one here that I think that's the cherry, and then the gooseberry and the grapes. But so the 6 1/4 inch diameter and the 7 1/4 inch diameter low ones have 3 fruits. So then the other 3 that are left, 2 of them have just 2 fruits. And this is one of those. You can see it, the fruits here and here. And then on the 8 1/4 inch high, low standard, there's 4 fruits. There's the gooseberry, the grape, plums, and a pear. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Diane. We appreciate all the work you've done to do all that research, and Roger for the photography. Lovely PowerPoint demonstration. Thank you.
You're welcome.